happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to Radio Free Rhinecliff. And this show, which used to be known as Correct Me If I'm Norman, and is now, in honor of tonight's guest, Rap Me on the Knuckles with That Ruler if I'm Norm. The guest is fifth grade teacher extraordinaire Chantal Collins, Ms. Collins, if you're a fifth grader. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Very excited.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Now there's just uncomfortable silence. Okay. I thought you were going to say something.
So I'm supposed to bring the questions.
Yeah. So you are a fifth grade teacher here in Rhinebeck at Chancellor Livingston Elementary School.
I am.
And did Chancellor Livingston ever own slaves? This just dawned on me.
Slaves and had brothels.
Really?
Yeah. He was quite an ugly man.
Wow. So were they going to change the name of that school? Is there a movement afoot?
There was somebody last year who was interested in kind of running with that. And I think with the pandemic, certain things just petered out. We weren't in school all day. But I would not be surprised at all if that isn't on a back burner somewhere.
Right, to change the name. And I wonder, did they float any potential other names for the school?
Actually, it was a student who's in sixth grade this year. And they had said possibly Ruth Bader Ginsburg School.
Okay.
Thought, wow, that's
exciting.
That's very exciting.
That is
maybe grandiose for our little town, but
well, why not?
Exactly, why not?
You know,
that's a good point.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg Elementary School. And, just like now they call it CLS. Yeah. It could be RBG.
Right.
Because nobody called Chancellor Livingston, CL.
No.
As far as I know, maybe. Who knows? I had no idea he had sort of a horrible past.
Yeah. It turns out he had, he was a slave owner and then also had a brothel in New York City and had slaves from up here who worked down there. He was... Right.
And now, I use the same verbiage, but now we don't say slaves. We say enslaved people.
Enslaved people, yeah, that's true.
Which is kind of awesome. I mean, lots of things, I'm going to call it politically correct. Lots of politically correct things are lovely and make a lot of sense. Some of them are fucking ridiculous, and I think sort of hurt Democrats in national elections. But we won't go there.
Oh, thank you for not going down that road.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we're supposed to smile and have a laugh. So how long have you been a teacher there at the brothel owner school?
I've worked in the brothel for well over 20 years now. 23 years, I think, at Rhinebeck. I started at the high school and worked my way down. And
smart.
No, I started. I was teaching a half day for a self-contained class in the high school with 4 students, and then I spent a half day over at the elementary school, working in and out of different classrooms.
What does that mean, a self-contained class?
It was for students who were, I think these particular students were going to BOCES for half a day for mechanics and different classes.
Yeah, trades.
Yeah, trade classes. And they were still struggling with some of the academics, so I worked with them in a classroom with 4 students and myself.
Nice.
Working more on basic skills.
And was that your first job after teaching college? After you have a certificate, I guess?
I do.
Probably a master's degree.
Yeah. No, my first job in teaching was at the Kingston Children's Home. For about 6 months I did that, which was a residential treatment facility for young boys, emotionally challenged boys. And
it sounds like a pretty tough first gig.
It was. There was lots of cursing and throwing things, and I actually left because I was pregnant and decided that I didn't really feel like having to restrain children.
Smart.
To begin with, and especially not pregnant.
Right. So. And how old were you for that first job?
29, 28 or 29.
So did you have jobs prior to that?
Not really. No. I just hung out.
Yeah.
You know what? I was a late bloomer. My entire family went away to college their freshman year and came home at the end and were not invited back. So we all had to work for a few years to get back into school. And so I took a little while to get through the process.
Wait, was this some sort of like family
flaw?
Tradition? No,
Yeah.
or was it by design? Your folks said you could go for a year and then you need to come work.
No, it was more, I just think we were a very immature bunch. And
Right.
so when we did go, we didn't kind of have the study skills perhaps that some of our friends did.
Yeah.
So it was a life lesson that I regretted for a while, but I don't anymore.
Yeah. So why did you regret it for a while? And why
Well, it was
don't you now?
embarrassing, partly. It was embarrassing that all my other friends were going back for their sophomore year, and I was working. I was working at the local bank, and at the Grand Union, I was working 2 jobs.
Here in Rhinebeck?
No, that was down in Mayapack.
Okay.
Because that's where I graduated high
Mayapack.
school. Or Mahopack, however you like to say
Well,
it.
you'd probably know. I mean, and there's articles. I saw an article a couple years ago on how do you pronounce the name of this town?
Yeah.
Mayapack.
And everybody does it differently. Or not everybody, but it's like half and half.
Even people who live there. People on the north side say Mahopack.
Mahopack.
And the southerners, lazy tongued southerners, say Mayapack. So you worked down there, and then when you went back to school, finally after a couple of years, which, by the way, I really wish I had done that. I went from high school straight to college. I didn't take any time to do something that would have helped me appreciate that great learning opportunity.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until much later I'm like, oh, I really squandered it. It was 4 years of a lot of fun and a couple of majors, and I learned some things, but could have been much better. Anyway, you went back. What was the college you went to?
Originally, I went to Indiana State University. And
you went there and then went back there after the
No, that's where I went just for 1 year.
1 year, okay.
And part of it was I was incredibly homesick also. I did not like being that far away. And at the time, New York State was a 18 drinking age, and I had no idea that Indiana was 21. It was one of the few states that... So there was not... It was Terre Haute, Indiana. It was like an industrial town. There was not a lot of things to do, and... Not that drinking would have solved it, but you know what I mean. It was culturally very, very different.
Yeah.
So I just didn't really take to it.
Yeah. Yeah, culturally different. Yeah, now I went from Cincinnati to Texas for college from 21 drinking age to 18. Uh-huh. And it was just great. But also, again, I wish I had taken those years off to work and really develop some appreciation for the opportunities that college held.
I think I always assumed that, or at least when I was younger, that everybody who went away and did the 4 years, they made great friends and had lasting memories, and like everything went fantastic after that. Whereas for the students who flitted in and out, their life would not be as good, I guess. At least that's what I thought in my early 20s.
Right. And, could be for some. So, but did you flit, or did you go back to another place and stay there for 3 years?
No, I went to Dutchess Community College just for 1 year I went to Ulster Community College because my parents lived in Eddyville.
Okay.
And I did that for a year. And
you left Mayapack to go to Indiana and then came back,
stayed a couple of years.
Eddyville.
No, came back, stayed a few more years in Mayapack working.
Okay.
Totaled my car going to work one day.
What kind of car?
A Chevy Chevette.
Oh, boy.
It'll drive you happy.
Was that their line?
Yes.
That's good.
And I was kind of going nowhere. I hadn't made any decisions. So when I totaled my car, I got a chunk of money for it being totaled, and I picked up and I went to Ireland. I was in 1985. I went to Ireland from, I think, October to January.
Wow.
And used the money.
Your people, the Collins clan, I'm guessing.
The Carney clan.
The Carney clan.
Yeah.
From Ireland somewhere?
Yeah.
And so are you in touch with relatives from there?
Yeah, I was actually just there. So my mom was born in Ireland, and three of her siblings stayed there. And so my cousins and my aunts and uncles are all there. So we used to go back. My parents would save all their money for 2 years, and then we'd go back for a month in the summer. So we went like every other year as kids.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you went there and you worked there?
No, I just lived off my family.
Nice.
So I just kind of traveled around and saw aunts, uncles, and cousins and things like that. And then that year, my parents and my brothers we were all there together at Christmas that winter.
Nice.
And then when I came back, I moved in with them. They had moved up to Kingston, and I started going to Ulster Community College, and then I transferred to New Paltz. And so I finished it. I finished my
with a degree in
elementary education and social studies. And then I went back for my master's right away. It was I graduated, and that's when they had all the budget cuts, and teachers were losing their jobs, so there were no jobs around. So I just went back and got my master's in a year.
In master's in education?
In special education, yeah.
Okay.
And I think I was pregnant with my second child then. Yeah.
Okay.
I had a baby at the end of getting my bachelor's degree, and then I had my second son during getting my master's degree.
And how many kids do you have?
I have 2 boys.
Any of them
men.
Going into teaching? 2 men?
No.
But it's not a bad career. It's
been a great career.
Would you do it again?
Yes.
Nice.
I definitely would.
Great.
But I never felt like there was a calling. I have friends who knew they were going to be teachers from the time they were 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever, and I kind of fell into it. I think it was the right path for me, but my mother was a very kind of liberated feminist, and I remember they started smoking Virginia Slims when they came out, and we got Ms. Magazine, and
that's hilarious.
And so to be a teacher to me just seemed like, that's what all women do. I couldn't be a teacher or a nurse, so I was going to be a marine biologist, and then I was going to be a journalist, and I just kept kind of going back to teaching and taking courses in it. So,
and in retrospect, do you think maybe it was your calling?
Yeah, I do. I do, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's drink to that.
Oh, okay.
Chantal has brought, as is the tradition here on this show named Wrap Me in the Knuckles with That Ruler If I'm Norm, she's brought a cocktail of some sort, already mixed up, it looks like. I brought
an espresso martini.
An espresso martini. That sounds great.
It's a little sweeter than I expected.
Uh-huh.
But
well, it looks good. It looks like coffee with milk.
I think it is. With a kick.
An espresso martini. And what is in the espresso martini?
It's made with vodka, kahlua, espresso, and that's it. And ice.
Nice.
A little shake.
Well, cheers. Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Collins.
Well, thank you. And nice to meet you, Matt.
Oh, yum. That's super delicious. Mm. So then how did you, you said when you got to Rhinebeck, you were teaching older students. How did you work your way down to 5th grade? Did you ever go lower than that?
Yeah, I taught...
and I'm going to ask that question about every part of your life. Did you ever go lower than that?
How low can you go?
Yeah.
I was a special ed teacher when I was originally hired. I was using my special ed degree. So I worked with kindergarten and 1st grade. Uh-huh. Inclusion rooms, so they would be rooms with some students who had, special needs academically. Mm-hmm. And then during my time there, I also did ESL, which is English as a Second Language, which is now
ENL.
ENL, I think.
Yeah.
So I worked with a student who came from Pakistan and spoke Urdu and didn't know any English at all, another student who came from China, but I had no training in it, so I was just kind of playing games and reading,
And I'm guessing you weren't fluent in Urdu.
I was not. That's the remarkable thing about ENL teachers, though, is you don't need to speak another language. They're just trained to help students learn English. So.
And what does that training look like? A lot of like pointing to pictures and saying the word in English?
A certain amount of that, yeah, at playing. And certainly when they're in elementary school especially, kids catch on so quickly to new languages, and the social fabric is really what kind of gets them going. But I also had 2 kids from Brazil, I think, one time, who were high school students. They were brothers who had moved here from Brazil and only spoke Portuguese.
Wow.
So we talked a lot about the different games that they played in their village. Because there was like one ball in the village, and they showed me, and we would start to exchange word. They would write the word for stick or whatever it was, and so I learned all these games that they played basically with sticks that were like bocce or like horseshoes, and very similar to games that have been played in tons of cultures for thousands of years.
That must be super satisfying to watch kids really picking up a language quickly.
Yeah.
And to be able to start communicating, more complex thoughts with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you still teach in an inclusion class?
I do. I work in an ICT class, which is I'm going to go totally blank now with what it stands for.
That's good.
But so I work with a co-teacher. There are 2 of us in the classroom, and she's remarkable. She's the same age as my son.
She's not listening. You can say anything you want about her.
She's terrible. But she's been a joy to work with, and they've changed it so that you're with the same teacher all day, every day, instead of people bouncing in and out of the rooms. And
other 5th grade classrooms don't have 2 teachers.
Right. Sometimes other 5th grade classrooms have a teaching assistant or another teacher who goes in, or an E&L specialist or speech person. So there seem to be, with classrooms now, there's lots of kind of support staff in and out, but I would have the most support in my classroom.
That's great. And so are there parents who request that their kids be in that classroom because they're most support, and then parents
mostly because of me, not so much because of the support.
Because of the teacher to student ratio.
I'm getting punished now.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know.
And then are there teachers who request that their kid not be in an inclusion or an ICS or whatever you said classroom?
ICT. I'm sure there are.
You just wrap me in the knuckles if I get anything wrong.
I know I should be holding that ruler.
You should.
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure if people request or request not to. So
right, probably some of both, and I think I heard some of both when my kid, my boy Moss, started at CLS in like 3rd grade, and I think there were parents who reasoned, well, you get like 2 whole teachers there, and it's just better, and plus they get to be around students with different needs.
Yeah,
and that's a good thing for building compassion. Then other parents who are like, "No, I don't want my kid to do distractions and temper tantrums or whatever."
Yeah, no, I have heard that. Absolutely.
And have you always done that, or did you ever not?
No, not always. There were times where I was considered what's called a supported classroom, where you might have students who need some extra help, maybe just in reading or just in math, and you might have an extra person in the room with you for an hour a day or something like that. So I've taught probably about equal amount of years now of teaching an inclusion type classroom versus a.
And tell me again how many years you've been there?
In 5th grade, I think.
No, just total.
19. Total is, I think, 25 this year.
And then eventually you'll retire. I mean, what are you, like 47 or something now?
Right.
So it'll be.
So when I hit 50, I'm thinking maybe. I'll probably retire another 4 or 5 years. I mean, who knows?
And then what?
I don't know. I thought about somebody had told me about classes you can take and you can teach in other countries, like teach English as a second language to either adults or children within schools. And some of them are, third world countries. Some of them are places like Dubai. So there's a lot of options. And I thought, up until actually this weekend, I was thinking that would be a really cool kind of second turn, like go somewhere else in the world and try something new and different. And then I was speaking with somebody who recently started a job, and they were talking about how hard it is to adjust to new personnel and new people, and if you don't really enjoy the style of the workplace. And I thought, wow, maybe with all of these, you have to sign a year contract, and I don't know that I want to get wrapped up in that.
Right.
So I don't know.
It's a danger. But, if say you always wanted to live in Italy and you got a job teaching English there and the school sucked, you'd be like, well, at least the food's nice. Right? And a year it's not.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Okay, so a year's not that bad.
No.
But a year could be horrible. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to kind of wait and see what unfolds.
Have you had horrible years in your career here at CLS?
Yeah.
This one right here, this is as low as you get, coming here to be interviewed on this little thing.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I've had some years that were really, really difficult.
And is it administration stuff or a gaggle of unruly kids?
Like there was an administrator probably close to 20 years ago now.
Well, you should name names. I encourage you to name names.
No, I'm not naming names.
Long.
But she was a little difficult to get along with, and at least for me and several others. Actually, if you ever want to bring Catherine Mencanary on here, you might get her to spill the beans.
Oh, well, shout out to Catherine Mencanary, who said she was going to try and listen in tonight.
Oh, well, I hope she is.
She's in Texas, and I asked her to come on the show.
I hope she does. She's fascinating.
Me too. That'd be really good.
But anyway, yeah, so when you don't get along with an administrator, that makes it really hard.
Yeah. And
you're around children all day long. So it's kind of a different dynamic from most other jobs because you're on your there were plenty of times where I had nobody in the class. So you're on your own with a group of kids, and it might be 20 kids, it might be 25 kids. And there are staff who have been absolutely amazing, and I've learned so much from, who have been mentors for me. And other staff who are nice people, but we didn't necessarily click or have the same kind of vibe in the classroom. Like I'm not a person who's big into having prize boxes and constant, food rewards or toy rewards. That's not my style.
Toy rewards.
Yeah.
Do some fifth grade teachers do that?
No, nobody in fifth grade.
Okay.
Nobody.
Well, do you have like classroom rules or?
Yeah. We do. I mean, a lot of times we have the kids create the classroom rules.
That's
great. Always a thing that's kind of creating the classroom community at the beginning of the school year. And, what rules do you think would work? And you try not to be negative, try and say more what you want your class to look like versus what you shouldn't be doing. Because it's really easy for kids to tumble down that. And you shouldn't hit, and you shouldn't pinch, and you shouldn't yell. And then there's like this rabbit hole of all the things you shouldn't do. And
if you're in Florida, there's all sorts of other things you shouldn't do.
Please don't say gay.
The Don't Say Gay law, which I guess passed. And of course,
one of the houses,
conservatives are like, "Oh well, it's not really what it is." Mm-hmm. But holy crap!
Yeah,
well,
it's such a slippery slope. I mean, they keep claiming it's not. That's not what it is, but
it really seems.
But a parent can sue a school. If they feel at all their child has been introduced to something that they're not comfortable with.
Yeah. That's insanity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just think about it. Like the liability for teachers alone. I mean, you would think the insurance industry would be against that.
Right. Yeah, between that and then what's the other Oh, the big brouhaha about critical race theory.
Oh, jeez.
And all of a sudden, nobody's supposed to be uncomfortable with history, and it's like, well, why shouldn't we understand what our history is? It doesn't mean that you did something personally to somebody else, but
yeah. And why shouldn't we be
history.
uncomfortable once in a while with what happened and what people perpetrated upon others?
That's kind of the whole point, is that you're supposed to learn from these experiences and not repeat it.
And if the learning can include sort of empathy and increased empathy, all the better. Yeah. In terms of like creating good citizen. Oh,
and kids at this age are amazing about that. We've done it well. We actually, again, Catherine Menkenary is the one who I watched like kind of lead Socratic discussions, and probably 10 years ago we did something where the kids would look at all the different sides of Native Americans, indigenous people, and settlers, and read about different accounts of where there was war or where people got along, and then they'd be we'd put 4 kids at a table, and they wouldn't know who they were going to represent, and they might be the angry settler, or they might be the settler who's trying to be kinder and, is not anti.
Right, or the shyster settler who's like, hey, I'm going to buy your land from you for this. And do you teach about the local tribe here?
No, not at all. 5th grade is U.S. history, and actually we teach also about Canada and Mexico.
Canada, I get a friend in Canada.
Hey, I've been to Canada.
Yeah, hey.
And local history is done in 4th grade.
Local history. And so
New York State, and looking at more local.
All right. So New York State. So that brings up this Common Core thing. Mm-hmm. What is that, and what's the deal with that? You're like, I don't know.
I don't know. They keep. Things keep getting changed. So,
but that's a prescribed agenda, course of action from the state.
I think people were upset with the Common Core more because of the testing that was associated with it. The curriculum for each grade level, the science just changed. It's now the next generation standards. So I know that we're getting something. We have to teach about matter and space, and we never did that before in 5th grade. And geology and rocks and minerals has moved to 4th grade. But some of it's just a shifting around of when you should teach what.
And you can no longer teach evolution. I'm sorry.
I think in New York we still can.
Oh, good. Phew.
Yeah.
But not so much in like Texas.
Right. There is no evolution in Texas. That didn't sound right.
That's a great
That's
headline.
A bumper sticker.
Actually, that sounded exactly right. Went to college in Texas. I got friends in Texas, and many of them are very conservative. Mm-hmm. I moved to New York City and became just a bleeding heart liberal. But,
were you conservative in college?
I was an economics major, mm-hmm. and when supply side economics hit, it made a lot of sense to me. I mm-hmm. bought into that shit hook, line, and sinker. Only later did I see just the cynical packaging mm-hmm. that really was. And also, over time, it became very clear that shit never trickles down.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was economically conservative, for sure. I don't think any college students, well, maybe some, are genuinely socially conservative.
Yeah.
I think that at that age, most college kids are like, laissez-faire. Let them live.
Yeah.
Let people do what they want. Oof. Well, you brought up the concept of What are you looking at?
No, nothing. Was something. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, because I lost it already. So.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah. Well, that happens when you're 47. I'm older. I'm here to tell you it only gets worse. You mentioned mentor. Have you had mentors in your career?
Informal or unofficial.
Yeah.
But I would say Catherine Menkenary was probably my greatest mentor, partly because we worked on the same grade level, so she was the person I went to.
And what grade level was that at the time?
5th grade also.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked with her in 5th grade. And she was the person. I went and saw her classroom when I was still working in special education, and I saw it and I said, this is what I want to do. I wanted to have my own class because I was bouncing back and forth. I was driving back and forth between the high school and elementary school.
Oh, so you finally got a new car after wrecking that one. We missed that part of the story.
So then I just didn't want to travel anymore. I wanted my own kind of place. And every year I had been teaching a different grade because at the time the population was smaller, I think. So I went into her room and I was like, wow, that's how I want to teach.
And what were the things that you saw in her room that really jazzed you up?
Actually, and Jack Fox was in her class that year.
Oh, Jack Fox.
So, small world.
Yeah, we were talking about his mom on the way down here.
Yeah.
If she's listening.
Because she opened it up for students. She opened it up to them to have discussions and to talk about characters in books and to talk about what was on the news and to have their own opinions and to be able to talk amongst themselves instead of it always being kind of teacher directed. It wasn't kind of the sage on the stage.
Right.
And
I never heard that, sage on the stage.
Yeah.
That's a fine description.
Do you want to be the sage on the stage or the guide on the side?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, yeah, the guy I student taught with taught me that. And so she was amazing. Joan Berland is another one who...
Oh, right.
The way she ran her classroom. And
my boy had her.
Yeah.
Mossy.
Moss had her, right? Yeah.
And she had another name during that time period. Pretty sure. All right. Well, here's the wooden ruler. I'm officially giving it to you. Ow!
Almost knocked your glass over.
Yeah. Well, so what? You talk about her being the guide on the side, and then you said that sometimes your students write the class rules. Is that sort of her influence, like coming out through you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what else? Are there other things that you can point to? Like, oh yeah, I got this from her. I got that from her.
I think just knowing when it can be student led and when it needs to be teacher led, because they're also still 10 and 11 years old, and things can spin out.
Is that how old 5th graders are?
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah, they're turning 11 this year. I know, but at the same time, they can be incredibly sophisticated. Like. In class Thursday, our Black History Month project, we changed it up last year and decided to make a quilt. James and Lisa Ransom have a great book about how enslaved peoples used quilts to...
They're coming on in a couple of weeks.
Are they?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm name dropping left, right, and center.
That's good. I like
all
that.
the people I know on the radio show.
All the people who are coming on.
So anyway, the quilt was an important part of Black culture. And so during last year, we just decided, let's try something different instead of just writing a biography. And so we created it's a paper quilt, but so students would research somebody and do the write-up and then draw two quilt squares. And so... Last year, I put it all together, and this year we laid it out on the floor, and we pulled out all the different. Well, there were 16 kids, so there's 32 squares, and then talked about how do you want to put this together, and the whole thing evolved. And there were several kids who could see. They'd be like, okay, well, what if you move that over here and this over here, and it's one of those eye-opening moments where I was like, I didn't know that the student didn't have that in them, but I didn't know that part of them as a learner.
Right.
And then also it was just nice to watch them. They were polite to each other, and somebody would say, well, what if we move that over there? And the majority of the kids would be like, no, we like it like this. And nobody took offense. It was just...
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But it's probably also a reflection of the respect that you bring to that classroom, the respect for people's opinions.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope so.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are times I'm sure I'm beastly, but
so one. All right, let's hear that. All right, what I was going to say before I started imagining you being beastly to your students was one of the things I always told my kids. There's all kinds of different types of intelligence. Mm-hmm. And some people are really good at saying, oh, that square should go there, and it would balance out sort of visually.
Yeah.
And some people are good at science. Some people are good at words. Do you see often your kids like, oh, yeah, you know, or change your opinion? Somebody comes in, you're like, oh, they're not so bright. And then you come to understand that their genius is in a whole different area. I'm sorry, what?
I've never thought that.
No, of course not.
Yeah, absolutely. We used to do a literacy through photography project, and we had a dark room set up, and the kids would Kodak donated film. This is going back a while.
Kodak.
And we did a dark room in the closet. This is also before OSHA and all the other, you know, you didn't need an eye wash sink and you didn't need all those things. And the kids would take pictures, and then we had little, you know, the dark room bags.
Wow.
So the kids would have to use a can opener and open it up and put it on the reel.
Right.
And do all that. And that might have been one of the first times where it was just so nice. There were kids who just, it was their moment to shine.
Right.
You know, they might struggle to put together an essay, but they put their hands in there.
Right.
And, you know, 30 seconds later, they had it done. And it wasn't just from my perspective. It was from the other kids' perspective, because it was like, wow, look, you know, and it reinforced that, like, we're not all great at this one thing or that one thing, but we all have greatness. Like, we all.
I'm melting. That must be so satisfying to see that happening.
Yeah. That's one of the first times I remember.
To see kids who sucked at the spelling bee sort of excel and get respect from their peers in these other areas.
Yeah.
And then do you have the latitude as a teacher here at CLS to really encourage that, to lay down a path in front of them that can encourage that?
We try to. I mean, I think there's times where it's just really hard to do that. Teaching math, I mean, you can use manipulatives, and I'm sure...
Manipulatives?
Manipulatives.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? That's French, yeah. Who's showing off now?
Oh, I'm having a hot flash.
Yeah, these drinks are strong.
In case anybody was wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
All right. We're talking about you having the latitude to encourage kids in these directions where they've shown.
One of the things that's always been nice is that we try and incorporate more hands-on activities also, like have them build log cabins, or have them create... well, in fourth grade they do the long houses, but
I love the long houses.
I did too. That was a lot of fun. But we try and do it in class as well, because it's a way for kids to cooperate, but it's also a way for, there are some students who can be amazing in the area of building something and seeing it and putting it all together. You know, kind of more left brain versus right brain, and you want to have enough activities so that everybody gets their moment to shine, or everybody learns in a pathway that works for them. Because me standing there lecturing probably works for, you know, a quarter of the class.
Yeah.
But I can tell the other 3/4 are.
Yeah, boy, that never worked for me. You know, just the somebody lecturing.
Wah, wah. Yeah.
Yeah, the grown-ups and
in Charlie
Snoopy
Brown,
and Charlie Brown, yeah. Well, so you've been at it for a long time. Have you had the joy of seeing kids whose special abilities you saw, special talents you saw at that age? Have you had the joy of seeing where they've gone and what they've become in their lives?
Or
because some of those kids, if they were 10 then, they'd be like 35 now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are a few students, and sometimes it's not even having seen something like that. It's just remembering a student and then seeing where they went with their talents, because it's not always what you pictured them doing, or not that I spend a lot of time thinking about what are they going to do when they grow up, but it's always kind of cool to see where they end up.
Right.
You know?
But you don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but there must be some kids who you're like, oh, artist, oh, accountant.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes that's accurate and sometimes it isn't.
All right, now what about kids? I'm just, again, it's the alcohol talking, not me. What about kids? And I meet kids like this in that age. You're like, oh, God, he seems like a 50-year-old man. It's always remarkable to see kids who just seem tons older.
Right. Yeah, they're like old souls. And again, I would say I might see out of, well, my class this year is 16, but they used to be as high as 25. But I would see maybe 4 or 5 afterwards. Like, there's a lot of kids, I have no idea what they ended up going and doing.
Right.
But,
right. Huh. Well, I'm just going to segue straight to this as a real swerve.
Okay.
You are currently single, and I know you're using some of these dating apps, or at least one of them, to meet somebody, which is a popular and not terrible way to try and do this. Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen an ex-student on there?
No.
Thank God.
No, I don't look at that age group.
I had a hunch. All right, good answer. No, but still, like like I say, you're 42, so like 35 and older. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so it was a good drink.
No, I mean, on occasion, I've seen people who I recognize or who I might know, but
right.
It's
it is. It is.
It's like a job, a bad job. A bad job.
A terrible job with horrible benefits.
I know.
Or no benefits.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you and a few of my friends, I send sometimes the catch of the day with a picture.
It's really the catch of the day. And often they're holding fish.
Oftentimes.
I don't know what the hell's going on with that.
I know. Or braiding their mullet on occasion.
Braiding their mullet. And my theory is the fish thing. So online dating, for those of you who've never done this, the guys, I'm going to say half of them.
I'd say half.
A better idea. Half of them show pictures of them holding big fish that they caught.
Right.
And my theory is, look at what a provider I am. That somehow, on some level, they're like, I'm going to catch a woman just like I caught this fish to feed the family.
And I'll feed the family
yeah.
forever.
Yeah, forever. And I don't know, it sounded sinister when you just said that.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. So how's all that going?
It's going. It's not. I've actually kind of not given up, but I think what I realized is that I'm not all that interested. I think for a while there, it seemed very interesting, and I thought maybe I'd like to date and see somebody, and it just I just don't think it's worth it right now.
Wow. Well, that's a harsh assessment of that equation of online dating. It's not,
I think some of it's I don't feel like making the time for it either at the moment. I had an interesting experience because I flew to Ireland on Thursday because my aunt is getting quite old and I wanted to see her before anything might happen. And 2 people reached out to me that day. And I said, I'm going out of town, and I'll be back, next week, and so on and so forth. And one of them started writing to me saying, I can't believe you didn't let me know that you landed safely. Prior to that, there had been can you send me a picture of you boarding the plane? I was like, what? Huh. That's odd.
Yeah, well.
And then there was a similar, the other personality was kind of similar too, in terms of, I wrote and said, well, I'm going to see my aunt today. Well, I thought you already saw your aunt. And it was like, dudes, I don't even know you.
Yeah. Thought you already saw your aunt. And why are all women liars?
You're not in Ireland. Yeah, so
Yeah, that's right. You're not boarding the plane.
yeah.
Oh, send me a picture.
That's what I realized afterwards.
Oh
I
my
was like,
goodness.
was that just a question to see if I was actually boarding a plane and not going somewhere else for the weekend, or?
Well, I think people bring their baggage and their damages. Their what?
I said Matt's shaking his head.
I think people bring their damages to that stuff, and often they write it in their profiles. Mm-hmm. You know,
you can read.
I did that for years, and people would write like, "I'm looking for a man who's not going to lie to me and not be a horrible cheater and can actually like have a job." It's like, oh, okay, I totally understand what your last one or more relationships was like.
Right.
Oh, well. I wish you the best.
So thanks for
getting
me on that.
Bringing it down. Yeah.
You were my mentor for that, and I'm not sure I appreciate it now.
That's the sweetest thing. All right. Well, we're just about out of time. Not really. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah. Here's a question from talk we were having before we went on. Do you ever secretly play word search while teaching a class?
No.
You brought up word search, and I thought I'd ask.
No, I've never done that. No, my word search issue is my is it receptive or
your word search issue?
It's not really
teasing.
Word search. It's expressive. My expressive language. Sometimes I have it all in there, and I can't access the word.
What does that mean? Expressive language
receptive language is what you take in. Expressive language is what you put out.
Oh,
and
that's funny.
My expressive language. It seems more and more since I turned 42, I have not I have a harder time kind of pulling the right word at the right time.
Right. I thought you were just 36, but whatever. Yeah, I think that happens to everybody. I find that with me all the time. And I'm like, oh, what's the word? Or what's that person's name? Mm-hmm. And it'll come to me, but from sort of surrounding associations.
Right.
I'll be like,
do you find that
right.
in conversation, though? Like, are you midway through a sentence and can't think of a word?
Sometimes.
Oh, okay. Because that's what I find happens more.
Especially scary for two reasons. One, my dad had dementia. That's how he passed away. And
Mine
two,
too.
I've made most of the money I've made in my life as a writer. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, it's nice to have the word right there. And when it starts not always being right there, it's a little terrifying. I try not to stress about it too much.
Yeah, I go back and forth with that.
The stress?
With the stress of it, yeah. Because I'm convinced all of a sudden, like, oh, this is it. The Alzheimer's is here.
Yeah, it's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I read an article. It's like, oh, coconut oil, good for, like, Alzheimer's. I'm like, great, I'll have coconut oil or whatever. There's always something. So what are the major sources of stress in your life? Yeah. You don't have to answer. You can pass on that. We'll come back to it if you'd like.
Pass on that.
All right, good. I'm going to go to the questions here. Did you, after you started teaching, did you ever consider other careers? Like, oh, maybe I should leave this and be a marine biologist or real estate
what I would have loved to have been would be a hairdresser.
Really?
I would have loved to.
Well, your hair's fabulous. Do you do your own hair?
I do my own hair, but I don't cut my own hair.
You said do.
I do.
You don't cut it, but you.
Right, but I have.
Set it. Do you have like curlers and
run my hands
one of those
through
cones that comes down?
But I always thought that was so cool.
Being a hairdresser.
I just being able to change the way people look and change colors, and I just always thought that would be really neat to do. I don't think I'd be good at it because I think it takes a real artistic. I think people who are hairdressers have a very artistic side to them. So I don't know that it would be my forte, but I think it would be really neat to be able to.
Yeah, some kind of artistic eye. Like, here's what looks good. Here's what looks good on that sort of
that face
head shape.
Yeah.
Huh. That's
not that I want you doing my hair.
I was just going to go there.
You're artistic in a different
don't
way.
Read my mind. I was just going to ask Matt if he had any scissors here in the studio. Anything else that you sort of thought over the years? Oh, that might be fun to do.
You know what? I think I would have loved to be a reporter, but I don't know whether that was just like kind of a glamorous thought in my mind or if I'd actually be decent at it. I think it would have been really interesting to interview people and to write and to like be a, political reporter, possibly.
Interesting.
But I went for a reporting job once. It was in Millbrook. Yeah, I went for an interview. I was that was my major when I was at Ulster Community College. I was journalism, and I was going to move on with that. And they had me interview somebody quickly and then told me to write an article about them. And I totally froze. I couldn't think of a single thing to say. And so that kind of time constraint just...
Oh, right. Journalism, you're always working on a deadline.
Right.
It's tough.
Watching all the President's Men, maybe that's what it was. I just thought that was so cool.
Well, also, when I was a kid, and you're like 35 years younger than me, there was Brenda Starr.
Oh, I know.
I don't know how you know. Maybe your parents looked at
Red hair.
Red hair, yeah. Who was your hair once red?
It has been.
It has been. Was it?
But not when I was a journalist. No, I remember Brenda Starr. Comic.
Yeah, and I think there were books, and it was a comic strip. Mm-hmm. Did that maybe help you think that'd be a glamorous or fun gig?
Probably, and I don't think there were a lot of female reporters at the time.
Right.
So that was kind of what was attractive about it as well. Was kind of breaking into something that was more male-dominated, maybe.
Right, you said.
But I liked to write. Like, I really enjoyed writing. And I think my parents held... Like, we got all the newspapers and, the New Yorker, and we had tons of magazines. So that just seemed like an important... My parents weren't writers, but the written word was very important in our house. Mm-hmm. So I just fancied myself. I would love to be able to do that.
And what did each of them do, your folks?
My mom was a social worker. Mm-hmm. And my dad worked as a childcare worker. And then he didn't get his degree till he was in his 40s. He went back.
Oh, nice.
I think he got it in some sort of social work. He wasn't a social worker, but he got a degree in.
That's nice. That must have been.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, you must think like, "Wow, that was so cool of Dad to like."
It was,
go
except
do that.
it was mortifying because he was going to New Paltz because he worked in Kingston. Then he would go to New Paltz a couple of days. This was when we were still living in Mayapack, and he would talk about kind of going to the student. What's the student union? Lounge? The student union,
yeah.
And that like Donna Summer was playing on the jukebox and stuff like that. And we were all teenagers, and all we could think of is like, oh my God, our friggin' dad is a loser, hanging out in the student union.
Oh, jeez,
how embarrassing! Like,
kids,
and he's thinking like, hey, kiddos,
well, so
fellow youth.
Hey kids, I'm here. I'm hep.
Yeah, exactly.
So did your kids go through a stage where they were just demonstrably super embarrassed by you?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure they're over it.
How'd you take that?
It was incredibly offensive.
Offensive?
Oh, my God. Because my mom was like a total nerd. She came from Ireland. You couldn't wear makeup. I had to wear a slip under my dress. Like, she didn't wear makeup. She was almost like looking down on Americans. They were all very caught up in having nice teeth and all these silly things.
Yeah.
Versus being moral and right. And so
and Catholic.
But she was not. It's funny. She was not. She was a huge supporter of the ERA and women's right to choose. So she didn't. We went to church when we were kids, but she definitely had no problem being against most things that the Catholic Church
And were
supported.
both of your parents on the liberal side of
Yes,
things?
Very much so.
And you seem to be. I follow you on Instagram there. Yeah. Once in a blue moon, you'll post something that's politically pointed.
Well, growing up in Rhinebeck, it was a very conservative town when we were kids. It was in the 60s and 70s. And
but your household wasn't.
well, my household was not. We had posters of Malcolm X, or we had a poster of Malcolm X, and
Too bad, I like to imagine.
Emiliano Zapata, and
Oh my God.
it was,
And Che Guevara.
we didn't have any Che, I don't think. But I remember getting in trouble because I drew with a magic marker little boogers coming out of Malcolm X's nose. My brother and I just talked about that the other day.
Drawing the boogers.
Yeah.
And what color magic marker do you remember?
Green. Of course.
Were there glistening white highlights? Did you have a white magic marker?
No, just green.
I spent so much of my youth, in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, drawing boogers coming out of every person's...
Every textbook.
Yeah,
right?
every magazine, yeah. If they had a nose, when
Yeah.
I was done, they had boogers
Yep.
dripping out of it. What is with that?
I don't know. what
Well,
that
you need
is.
to go-
It was a very short phase for me, though. I think that was the only time I did it.
Yeah, I think that phase is going to end for me
Yeah.
any day now. Yeah.
No, they were super. They were very liberal. They met at the Astor home. Both my parents were working there, and that's where they met and ended up getting married. And when Nixon was running against McGovern, I think it was 72, maybe something like that in the 70s. My dad went around getting people to sign, because you had to have a certain amount of signatures to be able to get on the ticket. And
Right.
there were about 3 people in Rhinebeck that signed it at the time. And one of them, their last name was Nixon, which my father always got such a kick out of.
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow, what a strange thing. And so how have you seen this town change in the 20 years since you were a kid?
I'm getting younger by the minute.
I know, we better end this show
Benjamin Button
soon. Yeah.
It's been a huge... It's been a massive change. I mean, the country itself has changed, but Rhinebeck, I mean, we didn't have much money, but it didn't seem like a lot of people did. There was like middle class and lower middle class. It wasn't a big stretch in terms of income. And then we moved down to Mayapack, and I was blown away by like Putnam, Westchester County. Just the income differences were massive, but Rhinebeck had always been pretty conservative, kind of. I don't know whether it was closed-minded or just it seemed that at the time, like you would hear people use the N-word, and my parents that was unacceptable, and my dad and mom were both the type of people to say something to somebody in the store, so that was also embarrassing.
They would call people out on...
Oh, yeah, if they said that, they'd be like, please don't, they wouldn't have Karen moments, but they would say, please don't talk like that in front of my child, or please don't this, and...
Which is a great example for their kids.
I know, and then I've ended up doing it later on and embarrassing my own children. Not that I can think of a certain time, but I know I've...
And you have 3 brothers?
3 brothers, yeah.
And did they all grow up to be like-minded politically?
Yes. Yeah, we're all of the same ilk, absolutely.
And your kids, your 2 sons?
My 2 sons are as well. Yeah. I think they have the... part of being younger, I think you experiment with more ideas.
Yeah.
My older son Pat was in the Marine Corps, but he's still. I was worried that he'd come out conservative, but he didn't.
That's nice.
And Johnny is pretty liberal also. I think
That must make you happy.
It does.
My eldest, I always say, one of the most liberal people I know, and she makes me feel like just downright like Reagan. she's just beyond.
Yeah.
And it's great because she opens my eyes to all kinds of stuff
right.
that I hadn't considered before.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's nice. Your children are growing up.
Yeah.
With that attitude that you grew up with.
Yeah.
And maybe even your students. Do you have to be careful?
Well, I wouldn't, yeah.
Do you have to be very careful about keeping your politics out of the classroom?
Absolutely.
Right.
I'll never tell kids who I voted for.
They must ask.
Oh, they do. Election years, they're like, who are you voting for?
But also
Who are
some
you
of
voting?
some of the shrewder ones must sort of guess. They must intuit where you are.
I think maybe some who I'm friendly with their parents, perhaps, and we may, belong to the same organizations or support
Liberal
different
Teachers
people.
of America.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's a good cackle.
oh my gosh, who was it? Somebody had a sign that said "Educate, don't indoctrinate." But it was, which I totally agree with.
Yeah, me too.
But it's somebody who's like an incredibly
those signs often
right-leaning.
come from Florida or Texas.
Yes, yeah.
That's the problem with them.
And I would certainly never. I never push my opinion or actually expose it either. In terms of it's mostly back at kids saying, okay, so, well, what do you think of this? But we don't have political discussions. I think Trump is probably the catalyst for the most political discussions, in my career.
Right.
Because there was so much polarization. Thank you.
Right. And so many headlines, so many fantastic headlines.
Yeah.
But fifth grade doesn't seem like it's too young to start developing sort of a political awareness.
No, not at all. But I think it's really important that students develop their own, because kids are very easily swayed.
Right.
When I know that people that I really liked, I would believe what they said. And so I don't ever want my opinion to be broadcast like that, so that it influences a kid one way or the other.
Have you ever been accused of indoctrinating? Mad parents calling you up.
Yeah.
Why are you telling my kid that all people are created equal? God damn, where do you get that kind of commie crap? You have.
Yeah.
That must kind of sting.
Yeah, it does.
When you're trying very hard, and I'm guessing succeeding at not sharing those points of view.
And I have to say that I've had so many amazing parents, and sometimes what you leave with, you could have 25 compliments and one parent has something negative to say, or they're not happy about something, and that's the one you hang on to.
Yeah.
It's like, and you just want to change their mind. Instead of just being like, okay, it's okay that they don't maybe like your style. Let it be that.
But you hold on to it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a topic for the show after this one, which is a couple of shrinks talking.
Oh, good.
Why you hold on to that negative.
Why do I feel this way?
Yeah. And with that, I'm out of here. We're out of time. We're over time because it's been so much fun speaking with you. Yeah, and I blame you.
Yeah.
Again, your apology. That's something for the 7 o'clock show.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Chantal, for coming on.
Oh, it was a pleasure. And thank you for having me. I'm
what a
so
treat.
Relieved.
I knew it was going to be super relieved it's over.
It.
Well, when you listen back, you'll hear sort of, I mean, I didn't lose count, but 3 or 4 or 5 places where you did blow it.
Okay.
All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in to Rap Me on the Knuckles with that ruler if I'm Norm, formerly known as Correct Me If I'm Norm, here on Radio Free Rhinecliff. Thanks to Matt Rosenberg and the Epicurean for hosting this show here. Everybody have a great, safe evening. Good night.